Oh, that's a good question. So obviously this is going to depend on your goals. For me specifically, I think there are a few core habits that are going to serve everybody and certainly serve me well. So exercise is a huge one. I don't do it daily, but I train 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I didn't exercise, I don't know that I would be an entrepreneur. Like, I don't know if I could handle the psychological roller coaster without the physical outlet.
Yeah, the release,
You probably feel that as like an athlete too. You know, like for being an athlete for so many years, I feel like I need to push myself physically in addition to mentally.
Absolutely.
If it's just mental, it doesn't do it for me. I need to have a physical outlet.
So exercise.
Exercise is one. The ultimate meta habit is reading. Because if you build a habit of reading, you can solve pretty much any other problem. You know, you want to learn how to be a better podcaster, you can read about that. You want to learn how to meditate, you can read about that. You want to learn how to make more money, you can read about that. And so what you need is to develop a habit of reading, and then whatever problem you're facing at the time, you have a method for solving that.
Okay.
Writing for me is huge. I don't actually know what I think about something until I write about it. I find that if
your ideas, that you get it out.
If you ask me something right now that I haven't written about before, what is really happening is I'm just talking my emotions. So what I mean is that you'll ask me something and I'll get an implicit feeling about what that topic is. I'll have some intuition, a gut feeling about it, and I'll say whatever that feeling is driving me to say. But I don't actually know if that's what I really think, what I deeply think, until I have the time to sit down and write it out, logically go through it. Because a lot of the time, if you would ask me the same question next week, I might have a different feeling at that time. So I'm talking different emotions. So I think I actually need to have time to sit with it a little bit and write it through to learn what I actually think.
So writing's third.
Exercise, reading, writing. I don't know. I would say that those are probably my main 3.
Yeah.
If I was going to pick 5 and the other 2 that I would add, going for a daily walk would be a huge one. That's one that like I kind of aspire to because I don't do that every day. But anytime I do, it really benefits me.
In what ways?
Well, you see this with a lot of anybody who does creative work in particular, that something about getting outside and walking, I think this is just me spitballing, I don't actually have science behind this idea, but when your body is moving, it's very hard for you, one, to not be active mentally. Like if you think about someone who's shut down mentally, what does their body language look like? They're usually closed off, their arms, like they're sitting, they're not moving very much. Try to be closed off mentally and be dancing physically. It's very hard to do. If your body is moving like that, it's really hard for your mind to be shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing, it kind of gets like the juices flowing. The second thing, and this is where I'm spitballing, I don't know if this is actually true, but I wonder about your non-conscious mind being like a bottleneck sometimes. And so if you're moving, if you're walking, it gives your non-conscious mind something to do. So you're like, it gets out of the way. And now you can actually like have this stuff arise or think in a different way than if you're sitting. So I don't know. I think that those are 2 methods.
That's cool. Okay, so that'd be the 4th thing.
Sleep is the 5th one. And this is one that I actually am pretty good about. So my cardinal rule is that I don't cheat myself on sleep. So if I stay up late and work till midnight, I'm going to sleep till 8 or 9.
Sleeping in.
Yeah. Like I'm not going to get up early because I don't want to cheat myself on that. But yeah, I think that those are kind of the core things. It's funny. Sometimes people ask like, oh, how can I double my productivity or something like that? And you'll see articles like that all the time, like follow this 1 5-minute trick to double your productivity. But the real answer to most of that stuff is like get 8 hours of sleep a night, exercise, don't eat like crap, and then instantly you have this boost of productivity and motivation.
Exactly. You have energy.
The fundamentals are covered 90% of it.
Yeah, exactly. You said this, you said you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. What are the systems you created to be successful beyond those kind of core habits right there?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. I think first I just want to talk a little bit about that point that you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. What do I mean by that? So often when we set about to change something or to achieve something, the first step is almost always setting a goal. And this is coming from someone like I was very goal oriented for a long time, right? Like
you're an athlete.
I was set goals for the things I wanted to do in sports, the goals for the grades I wanted to do in class, the goals for how much money I wanted to make in my business. And sometimes I would achieve those, but then sometimes I wouldn't. And so I had this question like, well, clearly I'm setting goals for both, so like that can't be the thing that determines it. And you see this a lot, that the winners and losers in a particular domain often have the same goals. Like every Olympian wants to win a gold medal.
Sure.
Every job candidate wants to get the job. So if the winners and the losers have the same goal, then the goal cannot be the thing that distinguishes the two. And the thing that distinguishes them is the process, the system behind the goal. And this is also important because achieving a goal often only changes your life for the moment. It's like, say you're, just take like a simple example. Say you have a messy room, and you get motivated and you set the goal to clean your room. Well, you can do that in an hour and then you have a clean room. But if you don't change the sloppy habits that led to a messy room in the first place, then you just end up with a dirty room again.
Yeah.
So it's like treating a symptom without treating the cause. And habits are a better solution in that case, because if you fix the inputs, the outputs fix themselves automatically, right? You don't have to fight to have a clean room if you have clean habits. And I think that that's true in a larger sense as well, right?
Yeah.
People want outcomes. They want to earn more money or lose weight or be more productive or reduce stress. But the outcome is not the thing that needs to change. It's the system that precedes it.
So give me let's bust the myth of how many days it takes to set a habit. Because there's 14 days, 28 days, 60 days, a year.
Right.
If you do something every single day, and maybe it changes for each person, but what's the science or the statistics say about how long it takes to form a positive or negative habit, I guess?
So 21 days is the thing you hear all the time, 30 days, 100 days, whatever. Right now, 66 days is making the rounds. Is the latest.
I saw that in another book. What was that book?
Well, there was one study done that found that 66 days was the average for how long it takes. And as a rule of thumb, I don't think it's terrible. Like, you should remind yourself, this is going to be months of work. It's not just going to be something quick. But even within that study, the range was quite wide. So if you did something simple, like drink a glass of water at lunch each day, it would take like 3 weeks. If you did something more difficult, like go for a run after work every day, that would be like 7 or 8 months. But I think actually that question to begin with is sort of there's like a broken mentality behind it.
The wrong question.
Yeah, it is. Because if you ask that question, the implicit assumption is, when do I have to stop working? Or when is this done?
And is it automatic after a certain period of time?
Well, the honest answer to how long it takes to build a new habit is forever. Because if you stop, then it's no longer a habit.
It's a constant choice and a decision, right?
I think people often look at habits as like a finish line to be crossed, but it's actually a lifestyle to be lived. And if you look at it as a lifestyle change, then you're saying, okay, what's something small and sustainable I can stick to, right? What's something that can actually last over time? So it is true that you can actually map this through research, that a habit will become more automatic with practice. But this reveals another important point, which is that there's nothing about the amount of time elapsed that leads to habits being built. You could practice something once in 30 days, or you could practice it 1,000 times. What actually leads to a habit becoming automatic and becoming learned and ingrained is repetition. So the phrase that I like to use is not 21 days or 30 days, but put in your reps. I mean, that's the real thing, is you need to practice. And if you put in your reps, then your brain starts to automate how that process works.
Yeah. What makes you an expert on habits?
Oh, man.
Based on lots of other people that are talking about habits. Why are you talking about it differently, and what have you discovered that's different than everyone else?
Okay, so 2 questions there. So the first one is expertise. And I think that, and I've said this many times before, I'm just going through this with everybody else. I consider my readers my peers in the sense that we're all just trying things out. The only difference is I write about what I learn and share it each week, but we're all just learning along the way. Early on, I had a feeling like that. It was like, who am I to, I'm just a guy. Who am I to write about this? And I had a friend tell me the way you develop expertise is by writing about it every week. So I wrote a new article about habits every Monday and Thursday for 3 years. And that was how I developed the expertise on the topic, was by writing about it.
You did research.
Right.
And you said, here's what I found. Here's what I tried. Here's what worked, what didn't work.
It's a combination of me reading the scientific literature and reading the research and then trying to distill the practical insights from that and testing things out in my own life as a weightlifter, a travel photographer, a writer, an entrepreneur, and seeing what that looks like, and then the two together. And I think you need both. Like, I don't want to be some new age version of an academic who's in an ivory tower just like theorizing about ideas. It's different what it looks like to put ideas into practice, right? Like, imagine you're a peak performance coach and you show up to coach like an NBA team. These guys are like, dude, you need to step on the court if you know what, right, to see what it's actually like. So you need to have both to have a firm understanding of that.
So you were researching and you were applying it into your life. And what was the second part of
that? The second question, which I think is probably the more interesting one, which is what makes my angle different?
There is a shortage of 500,000 machine learning and artificial intelligence professionals.
what makes this different
than every other book out there about habits?
So you can broadly put books about habits into two categories. The first book, the first category is what I'll call motivation models. So motivation models are about what sparks a behavior. How do you get started? How do you get motivated? The second category is what I'll call reinforcement models. So how does a habit stick? How does it last? Why do certain behaviors get reinforced? And sometimes books will touch on one, but focus primarily on the other. A lot of the time, they'll just kind of live in separate worlds. That's what I would say is happening in like the self-improvement space. Then you have the academic space, so psychology or neuroscience or whatever. And a lot of those books are focused on the why, but not the how. They'll tell you why something happens, why a particular neuron fires, why a particular biological process works the way it does, but they don't tell you how to implement it in your daily life. Mm-hmm. And so what I wanted to do was try to combine the two.
Why and how.
Yes, a book that is both why and how. Why do habits form the way they do? Why are they important? And then how do they actually work? And my hope is that Atomic Habits was able to do that largely because of the framework that I put together. So in the book, I lay out these 4 stages that all habits go through. And I felt like we needed a new model because most of the models right now are either a motivation model or a reinforcement model, but not both.
Okay.
And you need to understand what both sparks a habit and what makes a habit stick.
Maintains it, yeah.
Yes, if you want to be able to understand how they work and how to make them last.
And what are those 4 frameworks?
So the first stage of every habit is a cue. The second stage is a craving or some kind of prediction that your brain makes. I'll give you an example of these in a second. The third stage is the response, and then the fourth stage is the reward. So you walk into the question I had that no model I could find could solve in any good way or explain in any good way was, why can the same person respond to the same cue in a different way? So let's say you get into the habit of going to the gym at 5 o'clock every day, but then sometimes work gets busy and you don't go to the gym at 5 o'clock. Current models don't explain that very well because it's like, well, the cue is 5. You should be going to the gym right now. It says the routine follows automatically after the cue. Or why does someone walk into the kitchen and see a plate of cookies and then they automatically want to eat it? But you could just as easily imagine that you just got done eating dinner in the other room and you're stuffed and you're full. And you walk in and you see a plate of cookies and you're like, I'm stuffed. I don't want to eat anything. So what's going on there? And I think these 4 stages explain it, which is you see the cue or you experience a cue, and then your craving or your prediction differs based on your current state. So the way that you interpret the cues in your life is contingent upon the current state that you're in.
The way you're feeling.
Right. And also other things like your beliefs or your identity, the social group that you're part of, right? So like if you're in a different group, then maybe you interpret things in a different way. You could imagine one group, they practice a particular religion, they walk into a butcher shop and see pork, and they're like, oh, we can't eat that.
Right. Interpret.
Yes, good question. All right, so this is a key point in the book, which is that social norms, society leans heavily on us all. So there are just broad examples of this.
Family pressure, religious pressure, media pressure,
all kinds of
peer
stuff.
pressure, everything.
Yes. Let's say, so just some broad examples. You walk into an elevator and you turn around to face the front. You have a job interview and you wear a suit and tie or a dress or something nice. There's no reason it has to be that way, right? Like you could face the back of the elevator, you could wear a swimsuit to a job interview, but you don't do that because it violates the shared norms of the group, right? It violates the shared expectations of what that society has. But that's true not only in a broad sense that we're part of these tribes, like big tribes, what it means to be a Christian or to be American or to be Australian. For a local interpret cues is to join a group where the desired behavior is the normal behavior, right? Like there are plenty of people who they want to work out, but going to the gym feels like a lot to them. It feels hard, feels like a sacrifice. But there are also people who go to the gym every week and it's just normal. It doesn't feel like an obligation. That's the desired behavior is the normal behavior.
It's their lifestyle.
Right. Same thing for musicians. Like if you want to learn an instrument, hang out with people who play all the time. Like if you hang out with a bunch of musicians, it's like, well, yeah,
that's what we do all
yeah,
day.
We play 4 days a week. We play 7 days a week because it just happens. That's what the tribe does. The caveat to this, and the thing that I don't see people mention a lot, is that the reason social norms influence our behavior so much is because we want to belong to the tribe. We want to be friends with those people. And so we don't want to lose the friendship or lose belonging over violating the norms.
Yeah, you're not going to hang out with a bunch of vegans and have pork.
Right.
And just like be the only one eating that.
You won't hang out with them for very long because you're not going to be friends with them anymore.
Exactly.
Right? They'll kick you out.
So you want to rise to the standard of that group, of that community.
So the key, I think, is to join a group where your desired behavior is a normal behavior and you already have something else in common with that group. So Steve Camo is a good example of this. So like Steve runs Nerd Fitness, right? And all these people want to get in shape who are coming into his community, but they also love Star Wars or Batman or Spider-Man or, you know, all these other things that nerds are into. And if you show up, it can be intimidating to want to get in shape or, you know, work out the first time. But if you can connect with the group over your mutual love of Star Wars, then you're like, oh, well, I'm friends with these people, and now I also want to pick up those other habits with them because I want to belong with the group because we're already friends. And so I think you can apply that methodology to most new tribes that you join. Don't just join a new tribe because they have the desired behavior. Also try to find a way that you can overlap with them. Find some shared context.
Some other stuff too, yeah.
That you can bond over, and then it's easier to adopt the habits.
Musicians that like to be healthy.
Yeah, right.
If you want to do both, right? It's like finding that even subgroup.
It's like, hey, we love playing music, and then also you're going to start eating better because we all want to eat healthy.
Exactly. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so that's the second part, the cue, and then the desired habits, right? The craving.
Cue, craving, response, reward.
Okay, and what's the response?
So this is mostly about making it easy. So this is the habit itself, and the easier a habit is, the less friction there's associated with the habit, the more likely you're going to be to do it. So the way that I like to describe this, imagine you have like a hose, right? And there's a bend in the middle. There's a little bit of water trickling out. If you want to increase the amount of water going through the hose, you have two options. You could either crank up the valve and force more water through, or you could just remove the bend and let it flow through naturally. And a lot of the time, advice is centered on cranking up the valve. It's like you need to try harder, you need grit, you need perseverance, you need motivation, you need to overcome the obstacles in your life. And all those things are fine, but I think they're all short-term solutions. You might be able to do that for a day or a week, but I've never consistently seen someone stick to positive habits in a negative environment. It's really hard to fight that day in and day out. Mm-hmm. So the solution, I think, is to reduce friction. There are a ton of ways you can do this. One way is just to scale the habit down, make it as easy as possible. So people have heard things like this before, start small steps, whatever. But even when you know you should start small, it's still really easy to start too big. Mm-hmm. So, say you want to get in shape and you're like, all right, I want to run a couple days a week, but I know I should start small, so I'll only run for 15 minutes. But even that is like way bigger than what I'm talking about. I mean, it should be so simple.
الو
السلام هلا والله.
هلا والله السلام عليكم سلامك.
شو الاخبار؟ شو اليوم؟
كيف امورك؟ الوقت مناسب؟
اي سم.
كيف امورك؟
ببشرك الحمد لله.
كيف شغلك؟ كيف دوامك؟
والله بشرك ممتاز جدا، حتى كوكب قاعد يتحرك.
شوف انا جتني رسالة على تستفلاي ما شاء الله.
الحمد لله. انت اخبارك على يومك؟
والله الحمد لله ماشي اموري
الحمد لله. سم.
طيب شو اسمه انا كان بدي شو اسمه اكلمك على موضوعين، واحد موضوع تقني وواحد موضوع اداري. فخلينا على الجواب التقنية اول.
سم.
الحين بالنسبة للداشبورد اللي ارسلت لي اياها،
ايه
صراحة انا بس اطلعت عليها بشكل سريع وابي اعرف بس يعني لانه ما اتوقع عليها شروحات، لان هي شخص سواها وحطها في كاستم تمبلت ولا.
دقيقة خلا عشان اركز معك. عد سؤالك.
التمبلت ارسلت لي اياها هذه شخص سواها ونزلها صح؟
دقيقة انا نسيت وش سالفة التمبلت. انا ارسلت تمبلت ما اذكر.
أبغى اسمه إيميلوس اسمه.
قصدك الداشبورد.
إيه الإيميلوس أدمن تمبلت.
لا هذا شو اسمه. أنا يوم بنيت الداشبورد قلت ما أبي أبدأ من الصفر، لأنه زي ما أنت عارف الداشبورد فيها أشياء كثير UI يعني بلشة، يعني المشروع مستقل بحد ذاته لو تشتغل على الداشبورد. فرحت وشريت إيميل أس تقريبا الظاهر اسمه كذا اللي أرسلت لك شريته واللي هو سورس كود جاهز ودوكيومنتد فرونت اند اند باك اند فاير بيس اللي اعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم للداشبورد لكنه كستمايزبل. واضح؟
جميل. بس يعني اقدر اعدل الاكواد حقتها وزي كذا.
ايه تقدر تعدل على كل شيء. هو شو مسوي لك يعني مصمم لك الباتنز مصمم لك النافيجيشن مصمم لك اللوج ان ومبرمج لك اللوج ان وكل شيء. طبعا بس انا ربطته مع الفاير بيس حقت كام تمام. وتقريبا يعني شريته بمبلغ رمزي وطيح 50% من الشغل. فهمت؟
صحيح. طيب لأن أنا كنت أحتاج بس نسوي له تخصيص بعض الأمور أبي لأنه الداتا اللي موجودة في الداتا بيس للمنيو تقريبا ما هي نفس أي خلينا نقول customized items يعني. لا في كاستم يعني. أنا مسوي بعض الأمور ما أدري يمكن تشوفها أنت يعني شيء مو صحيح أو صحيح، لكن في موضوع الايتم انا حاط حتى في النيم والكاتيجوري حاط كماب انجلش عربي على اساس انه ايش، لانه خاف يحط لغه واحده ويجي ينزل في بعض الحلول مثلا زي الترانزليتر بس بروحها ما يعطيك نفس بعض عندنا مفردات نستخدمها عاميه نستخدمها كرسميه. فانا حطيت خلينا نقول بشكل عام انه بيانات مفصله على احتياج اللي ينزل للتطبيق. عشان كذا كنت احتاج موضوع انه ايش يكون داشبورد اعدل فيها اساس يناسب الايتمز.
طيب وش رايك ندخل جوجل ميت وتفتح لي عشان افهم اكثر، ولا في سؤال يعني انا احس اني ما ادري هو انا كيف اقدر اساعدك؟ وش السؤال اللي انت تحتاجه؟
طبعا اول شيء انت ساعدت السؤال الاول هو التخصص بس للموضوع هذا فاقدر اخصص كويس.
ايه
الموضوع الثاني اللي هم الداشبورد نفسها، هل يعني تقترح انه نكمل عليها قدام يعني ولا قدام خلينا ايش مثلا تستخدم مع ان هي اصلا اكواد جاهزه
هي ترى فقط اكواد فرونت اند يعني اغلب فرونت اند جاهز لك، فما تحتاج انك تبني البutton حقك، ما تحتاج انك تبني السلايدر حقك. فهمت؟ كل شيء مبني وجاهز بستايل واحد. التشيك ليست، التشيك بوكسز، الاد يور فايل، اد سبيسيفيك فايل، كل شيء موجود لك. فهمت؟ فتبي ايمج سيلكتر والطقه هذه كلها موجوده. فهمت؟
فالمقصد مثلا التقنيات المستخدمه والاشياء المستخدمه هذه كلها يعني نادر ما نحتاج نغير شيء في المستقبل يعني.
يعني انت يعني اذا استخدمت هذا الكود بيس ما تحتاج انك تبني مثلا اشياء تاخذ من الوقت، مثل الجداول تاخذ من الوقت وهي يعني فقط يو اي، وانت تبي تركز بس على الداشبورد. فهمت؟
صحيش، تبي تركز على البزنس لوجيك.
اي تبي تركز على البزنس لوجيك بالضبط. فتلقاه موفر لك شو اسمه اعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم الجدول.
وش الاركتكشر اللي تستخدمه في الفرونت اند هذا؟
والله انا ما اذكر لانه صار فتره طويله على المشروع ويعني